welcome back. Aggie Nation, powered by the Eagle. I am Aubrey Bloom, joined by Robert Cessna. I'm sure our next guest has heard that bumper music a few times in the last couple weeks, or last week or so. His name is Stephen Godfrey. He writes for SBNation. His story, Meet the Bagman, has, I think it's fair to say this was a viral story last week. It started with y'all's site, and everyone's tweeting about it, talking about it, moving around. Stephen is joining us now on Aggie Nation. How you doing today?
Good. I have not heard that song at all. I think you guys are 26 or 27 on my radio list since Thursday morning. So, nice one.
There you go. Good job, Rob. See, Rob coming in. No one else thought about that one. Everyone.
It's like bad bro rock. So yeah, good job.
A lot of people have read the story, talked about it. I don't want to dive into the details too much that are in it because people can read it for themselves, and that's just doubling up, wasting time. I have some questions I want to ask you, and the first one, as I was reading this, obviously we're a sports radio show, but we both work at the newspaper here. As I'm reading this, I'm going, how in the world did he get these people to talk to him? And that is my first question. How difficult was that, and what was the process like?
Well, I mean, if you guys work in the newspaper industry, you know that the methodology in which we use is probably not encouraged by traditional journalism standards. But that was, I mean, honestly, guys, that was how it got done because I sat and met with my editor, Spencer Hall of Every Day Should Be Saturday. He's also my editorial director at SBNation. We talked about this back in, I want to say, right around Thanksgiving. And we knew that obviously we weren't going to get anybody on the record. I mean, this is a business that's clandestine. So we were willing to make concessions in that the point of the piece is not for people to figure out what schools I'm talking about. The point of the piece is not to figure out what players I'm talking about. It's that this is so ubiquitous and this is so widespread that we need to advance the conversation in what how we term our student athletes to be amateurs. And but to answer your question in a long-winded way, it was about 4.5 months of sort of a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, some meetings that went nowhere, some people I got through pre-established contacts, and then some of the guys I had to reach out to cold, which was really hard. And I failed a lot more than I succeeded.
I got a couple, questions I want to ask you kind of about this. One thing you talk about is most of what I got from the background comes from the interview at the end of the story that you did with Dan Rubenstein, I guess another guy there at SBNation. One thing that you said was that for a lot of these, and I love the term shadow boosters, it might be my new favorite phrase, but that this comes from a genuine concern. They have genuine concern for the players. It comes from a really personal place for them, and that they're not looking for the credit from the public necessarily. They just want to be involved with the process. Did that surprise you when you learned that?
Yeah, the selflessness, I mean, I kind of had an idea because otherwise you would know who these people are and they would get in trouble. But the thing that surprised me the most was the intricacy of it and how detailed these operations are just by using word of mouth and really not using a lot of technology for obvious reasons. I think that their selflessness, I think, stems from just a total devotion to their school. And you guys have probably met people like that. There's fans, and then there truly are fanatics. And, the concept of paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year to your favorite school, or, I mean, not really paying it to your school, but paying that to create some sort of competitive advantage. Most of us wouldn't do that. I think 99 out of 100 people wouldn't do that. And so these people feel like they're making a difference. And one guy told me, hey, he goes, I view this as an investment in the most important thing outside of my family to me.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, we obviously know those people. A&M here in town is obviously in the SEC, so we definitely know those people. But yeah, to me that's surprising. That the selflessness involved, the way that the fans feel the need to get involved. I thought was an interesting part. That's how a lot of these people get started, and is they feel like they can't help it, that they have to get involved with the process somehow. Was that maybe? You said the intricacy was more was one of the most surprising things to you. What was probably the craziest part about how intricate these processes are?
these guys move in real time very quickly, and I think when you step back from it and you look at what is traditionally defined as a conspiracy, there's a lot of people involved here: players, families, the guys making the payments, some of the guys in certain situations providing the money. The bigger a secret, the bigger a secret becomes, the less of a secret it is, and so it's very tough to manage all that. I was really impressed with all that because we will hear now and again about a scandal in the media. Last year it was Oklahoma State sort of versus Sports Illustrated, but for every one of those you hear about, it's happening at every campus. It's happening at every major school and every major program, and they're learning from other people's mistakes. They're getting better because someone else got caught.
I wanted to ask you, what has the response been to this story now that it's been, I guess, almost 5 days since this came out? Have you heard from a lot of people, and you mentioned that some of your friends in the, I hate the term, we'll say traditional media, just couldn't believe you were able to write this, but have you heard from anyone in the system, coaches or anything like that are saying like, oh, this absolutely does not happen, this is ridiculous? Because to me, the response, yeah.
No, I've gotten just some sort of normal personal emails from people that work on the other side of the industry, be it in the athletic departments or communication staff, SIDs, or some coaches. But no one denies this happened. Absolutely not. No, I think they'd be ludicrous to do that. There's also a lot of people right now who probably don't want to talk to me, who don't even want to say, "Hey, I read your story." Like they don't want anything to do with it. So I think that's been the leitmotif for a lot of administrators.
Yeah, because I'm more interested in what the response has been like, because we talked on the show, and this is why I want to have you on so much, about this current culture of acceptance in college sports. We talked about it with the fact that their show causes aren't even up yet, and Bruce Pearl and Kelvin Sampson are already both back in the mix. And it seemed to me the general response to your story wasn't like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's, oh, this is kind of cool to read about. I've always wondered how this works, because we all know it's happening.
Exactly. It's not about hiding the evidence. It's about hiding the crime. You can show that you did the crime. You just can't show how you did it, because it's so ubiquitous. The system goes so much further than one school. I mean, I can't impart on fans enough to stop worrying about what school it is. I'm not divulging the sources. I've been asked, about the NCAA. It doesn't matter. I'm protected under a variety of shield laws, and I also have the benefit of a great staff at SBNation and Vox Media that would support me if things ever got really tough. The point is not about the who did it. It's that this is so widespread and so commonplace, and no one really seems to be talking about that. So that was what we wanted to focus on for the piece.
I wanted to ask you one specific question that came up in the interview at the end of the story, is that Dan asked you if there was a particular recruit or particular coach that everyone had a story about, and you said, yes, Cam Newton. Everybody has a story about Cam Newton. And I wanted to ask you if you feel that this system, whatever you want to call it, the system of shadow boosters and sleeper cells that are paying guys and all this stuff, has, in your opinion, obviously you didn't do this before then, but do they feel a little bit empowered because of how in the open the Cam Newton story was and nothing really came of it? Do they feel like almost even more able to do this after that situation?
I think so. I mean, you saw look, the NCAA is toothless. I mean, we've seen in case after case the Miami infractions. I mean, the latest round of Miami infractions, I should specify. I mean, the NCAA has no real power anymore. I mean, ultimately, there will become a point when the conferences themselves grow so powerful that they'll look around and realize that they have no idea why they're being covered by a neutral body and handing them money. So, I don't think there's fear of getting caught right now because they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose any wins. They don't want to lose any momentum. That's a big fear amongst these guys. I still don't want to get caught. They still take. I don't want to paint this picture like it's cowboy culture. It's not. I mean, these guys do a lot to maintain a level of secrecy and to make sure that their tracks are covered. But as far as the fear of the NCAA, I mean, no, not really.
What about, you mentioned widespread, all universities do it, but I've been down here 40 years. people I talk to and little information that I get, I still think that the South and Southwest is better at this over the course of decades. I'm not up in Penn State or Oregon or the Pac-12, but I just think that the South, there's more of those fans that you talk about, more of those people. Is your research able to shed any light on maybe one part of the country better than everyone else?
I would tend to agree with your statement there, having, and really I think one of the reasons that A&M has folded so effortlessly into the SEC is that those cultures are very similar. When really, just as someone, I'm originally from Georgia and I went to college in the SEC, we sort of, you consider the South and then Texas sort of as its own culture, but they're so similar in so many ways, this being one of them. I think that's a fair assessment. However, I can't create any kind of comparative analysis because I focus solely on the Southeastern Conference.
Okay.
But I would agree with your sentiment. I mean, you go back to the allegations that are in the 30 for 30 doc about SMU and just how the old Southwest Conference was,
Sure.
it was a buyer's market, and it wasn't like SMU was doing something that everyone else wasn't.
I wanted to ask you, kind of along those same lines, you mentioned in the interview at the end of the story about Dan had asked you if the schools, let's say an SEC school is looking for a coach and a coach is coming in there, that they don't want to know how the process works, who the people are handing out the money necessarily, but they want to know that situation is there. How has any coach, did you, when you in all your dealings with these people, was there any cases of a coach coming in and trying to stop the wheels of this process and it coming back to haunt them maybe?
No. Coaches are never going to speak to it directly or indirectly because that would acknowledge that it exists. They want to know if things are getting taken care of in a really vague term, just like the one that I just used, that things are getting taken care of, and they don't want to know any more than that for plausible deniability. So there is no such thing as a 100% clean coach, and I don't say that to indict the coaching profession because it does bleed down into high school as well. The hands of a college coach might be dirty, but they're no dirtier than the hands of any coach at a major Texas high school power. And if people want to refute that, that's fine. But, the system starts at the high school level. But to that end, this is a bigger issue, and I'm not trying to indict any one player in the scheme. It really, look, college athletics hasn't been more popular, than it is right now. We're sitting on a radio station right now in April talking about college football. So we're just as guilty. We profit off of this. We're allowed to do this for a living. So I don't want to point the finger just at coaches, but yeah, they do know what happened. But no one is going to be dumb enough to try and clean it out completely. Or if they do, then they should probably go coach D3.
Okay. Could the system change or be altered if the 6 major conferences are able to pull away from the NCAA and really have their own rules as far as football is concerned?
In terms of compensation for players?
Right.
I would say yes. There's 2 forms of payments that I focused on in this piece just throughout the course of investigating these guys is, what we call the bidding war and then we call compensation. So the bidding war is all the stuff that goes on between rivals or regional rivals or in-state rivals before kids sign. And that's sort of the stupid money, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, even more sometimes. That is one thing, and that really is sort of morally reprehensible if you're talking about college football being an even playing field. Whether it is or not is up to you. Then the second part, I agree with sort of the idea that player compensation could get rid of, and that's these maintenance payments, $100, $200 at a time to these kids every couple of weeks or every month or so. That's no different than what you give if you're listening to this right now, you get a kid in college, you're going to get a phone call, hey, I need $100 for this, I need $100 for that. When I spent time with these guys, and they would hand money to players, and I went along with one individual and witnessed the entire transaction. When that happened, this wasn't, hey, go out and buy yourself a Lamborghini. That idea of excess is not the norm. It's so rare right now. This is, hey, you grew up dirt poor. You're in a university environment, a social culture that's completely unknown to you and requires a lot of money just to maintain a normal life. So, these kids can't go out on a Friday night. They always say, oh, well, you get all your food paid for. You're eating on campus at one place. These kids can't go sit at a restaurant. These kids can't Usually they can't pay a parking ticket if they get one, or go buy some clothing. It's just that part could be addressed instantly. It could technically be addressed by the NCAA. I just don't think it ever will be.
Yeah, I found that an interesting part in the piece also. You talk to people who, they don't care if it's against the rules of the NCAA, because in their mind, in some cases, and to me the most fascinating instance was you talked about how a coach one time, or one of these boosters, it wasn't a coach, it was a booster, put through, instead of giving the family money, they helped pay for someone to go to rehab so that they could take care of their kid, freeing up the mom to be able to go watch the son's football games instead of having to deal with her grandchild. To me, that was the fascinating part of this, is that a lot of these guys consider this a very personal thing. They're not trying to break the rules just to break the rules. They're trying to legitimately, in their mind, help some of these kids out and help their school at the same time.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. They're doing that for a reason. It's not selfless.
Sure.
A lot of these guys acted very noble when they spoke to me, but it's not quite like that. They're doing this so these guys will come play, college football for their team. However, you're absolutely right. I mean, this concept that everything is the 1980s and it's Miami is just false. A lot of these things, I'll put it this way, a lot of the needs that they're addressing in terms of incentives and what's considered illegal should probably be addressed either by the conferences, the schools, or the governing body, in this case, the NCAA.
All right, Stephen, I think we're about out of time, but thanks for coming on with this. We'll try to get back with you maybe here soon and get to kind of some takes as this kind of goes along on the reacts and stuff like that. But thanks for coming on with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Be good.
Going.